let's go to case study number 2. This is
Yeah.
another B2B thing
Yep.
and long sales cycle again. So take us away. Case study number 2.
Yeah, so this one is slightly different, but I really encourage the audience to listen carefully. If you are in a B2B, marketing sales environment, and if you're selling something with a technical component, listen up. Don't click away now. Don't turn it off. Because the background here is that, first of all, it's pretty well known that right now sales cycles are just it's just taking longer to close deals anyway. So you compound that with the fact that there's just a lot that goes into making a buying decision when you have a heavy technical component, to the product or the technology, the solution that you're selling. And then just because of the growing B2B buying committee, buying committees are just getting larger. So the problem here is that, due to the specialized nature of the information that's needed, a lot of our traditional marketing approach is like, we have a white paper on that. We have a data sheet. We have some sort of a product brief. We have an application guide. Right. There's kind of these normal, like, well, what else do we produce? Like that's what marketing does. And hey, look how awesome they are. They look really great. They're well designed. The challenge is that 50% of the buying committee, again, going back to the stakeholders, the influencers, the decision makers, are not directly engaged with the vendor. And you're not necessarily going to have an opportunity to sit down and have a conversation, whether it's with this technical individual contributor who is the person who can't say yes, but can definitely say no. You're not going to have an opportunity necessarily to sit down with them and enter into a conversation. They can ask questions and you can bring in an engineer and you can do all this. So the big challenge is, well, what does a marketer do? Because the old idea of like, well, marketing, especially around product marketing, produces product briefs and data sheets and does all these things. Like, that's not sufficient because that doesn't actually answer the question. What the buyers want to know today is, can you solve my problem? Period. That's it. The fact that we're a little bit better, the fact that we're a little bit faster, the fact that we're a bit cheaper, we're a little bit cheaper,
Sure.
does not matter. And regardless of what they tell you, even though they always do buyers will fake us out a lot and fake out sales teams by saying, we're just going to make a decision based on cost. We're going to make a decision based on quality. We're going to make it. That never is the case. And I just encourage anybody who's saying, really, go back and do a review. Go back and do a review of your last, even just 2 or 3, close lost deals. And if you really do, if you're able to talk to the customers, you're going to find out, they said it was price, but guess what? That was a factor. That wasn't all of it.
Sure.
So,
Mark, do me a favor, take a step back and just give us the business context. So give us like the industry.
Yeah.
What's the size of the company?
Yeah. So this particular case study comes from a company that has built special silicon. Silicon are just the chips that, you might think of them as the processor that's in your computer. That's one version of silicon. There's many different types. This is a piece of purpose-built, not a piece. It's a purpose-built chip. It's silicon that does this video encoding function. So what we talked about in the first case study, someone like a Hulu, like an Amazon Prime, like anybody who's streaming live video, like a Facebook, like a YouTube Live, like a Facebook Live, anybody where you have a camera and then someone on the other end is watching. It could be video conferencing, could be Zoom. All of those require very fast and very efficient video encoding process. And you can just imagine that as the users scale, then, this becomes a pretty big challenge. So this company has built this purpose-built silicon, designed it, produced it, very, very expensive process. And the challenge is that it's not sufficient to kind of take your typical marketing tactics, which is what I, explained as the setup, and just apply those. In other words, like, okay, I'll get some, I'll get the bullets from the engineering team and we'll go create a beautiful looking, data sheet, for example. So how do you solve for this? Because you have to have business understanding and you have to be able to connect going back to what does the customer really care about? They will say they care about the speed, the performance, the quality of the product. And yes, that has to be validated. There's benchmarks. All that's true. But at the end of the day, what they care about is, do you solve my problem? And so marketers who don't understand what the ecosystem is that the product's going to be used in are going to really struggle here. Really struggle a lot, because what will happen is that the content that gets produced can be beautiful, it can look really nice, but it doesn't connect to the ultimate question that that buying committee is asking. And that is, does this solve our problem? Period. Whatever that problem is. And so this was something that I saw very, very plainly. Now, I had the advantage personally coming from a technical background. Again, I mentioned, I started programming when I was 12 and taught myself various languages. And, so I am a technical person, but I have spent my entire professional career in sales and marketing. So I never actually, I don't code today is the point. But I learned early on that I needed to become a master of not only the domain, but an technical understanding of how not only does our product work, but how is it used by the customer. So the case study here and the unlock in terms of really providing a boost in marketing effectiveness is that I doubled down on building, my network by actually learning and by intentionally creating and participating and basically being a salesperson, really effectively. And I have personally, again, working alongside sales in some context, every company, is a little bit different. I wouldn't suggest marketers just go rogue and just start, selling outside of your, normal channels, et cetera. But to the extent that you can go out and directly drive revenue, it does so many things for you. First of all, you have empathy for what the real need is by the buyer, by the customer, and what the problem is they're trying to solve. That then allows you to directly correlate and have a whole different lens to messaging, to positioning, to what you're saying about the product. And I personally haven't experienced this process where I haven't come back and said, oh, wow, we really need to rethink this positioning, or, hey, this sounds really cool, what we're saying here. It's totally meaningless, to the buyer. Yep. Here's what they really care about.
Yeah. So, all right, fast forward to the part about you hiring a journalist to get through some of this. This is interesting. Go ahead.
Yeah. So as marketers and as marketing leaders, we're always, I think, being presented with, even though, there's like a common framework, right, into the roles that you might have. And, and I tend to think that every company is a little bit different. Every market is a little bit different based on the constraints that, we have on either budget or, there can be a lot of different constraints, right? It doesn't necessarily make sense to always do the cookie cutter. Okay, I have these, 3 generalists who I call marketing managers. Then I have a director of marketing, and then I have a director of comms, and I have this, and it's like, okay, you may have people filling those functions, but the problem is that what ends up typically happening, again, if you're in a more technical environment, and if you're in one of these protracted selling and, selling processes, where your sales cycle is 12 to 18 months or longer, is that you end up with marketers who, you look at the content, you're like, hey, that's a great looking white paper. Too bad, like, it's sort of empty calories. You read it, it's like, all right, it's well written. But, it just doesn't tell me anything. Like, it's not going to move anybody to say, I need to talk to this company. I need to learn about this technology product, et cetera. So the aha was, what if I went to the market and looked for a journalist? What if I found someone who was already writing about the space? By very definition, they're going to at least understand the ecosystem, even if they're not an expert on the technology aspect of our product. They know very well who the stakeholders are, what the lay of the land is. And that's going to give them a much better framework for positioning and for writing. And so I was fortunate enough to, through relationships that I have, it's another benefit of staying in one particular ecosystem or industry or, market for a long period of time. You kind of, you get to know people. And so I knew of someone who had a tremendous amount of experience, was writing in the area that this company produces products in and then, sells to, and has actually a great brand name individually. And it was an opportunity was presented, which was partially opened up through just one of those casual conversations, right? And the bell went off in my mind, and I went, wow, this could be an amazing fit. We were able to bring him on, and it's been just absolutely incredible because he's able to leverage his name and standing in the industry because people trust him, even though now he's working for a vendor, which the first time in, like 20 years, because he had been an independent freelancer doing his own consulting, writing, for a long, long time. But that wasn't lost. It's not like all of a sudden, oh no, this person's now working for a vendor, I have to look at him different. They're like, no, I'm still consuming his content online. He has his distribution channels, etc. And at the same time, he's able to bring that perspective of the customer, which I think is a real key message I don't want to get lost here, is maybe you're not going to be able to go find a journalist to hire onto your team, but you need to find marketers who have lived in the ecosystem, know the environment, can say, hey, I've been on sales calls. I'm on sales calls now. I listen. I know what the customer cares about. I know what they're feeling. So important.
Yeah.